So far, Voices has been available on every podcast platform, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube, which is the place that a lot of people like to take in the show.
We're very attractive.
Yes, yeah, we are drop dead gorgeous, every single one of us. And the people need to know. Obviously. Starting today, though, we have a brand new method of conveyance for these perfect takes, which is we are partnering up with KUTZ. I believe that's 103.1, if I'm not mistaken. The Cuts. Yes. We'll be featuring every Voices Tuesday show on Tuesday at 5 p.m. So,
yes. So on your drive home,
the radio.
On your drive home from the office to the kitchen, you can listen to us.
Yeah. Now, if you don't have a smartphone, it's no longer an impediment to listening to Voices.
Doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you have just time traveled here from 1998 and don't know what's going on, then you're in good shape. You're good.
Good year.
I'm super excited about this. I'm working on my radio voice. I think we're gonna call me the K-hole. Skylar, you can be the douche. No?
All
right.
I think we can do better.
Okay.
Skylar's strongly against.
I was thinking more along the lines of the Adonis or
the
Guitar
Adonis.
Slim.
I like the Adonis. That's dope.
All right. Well, we're workshopping this. It's our first episode on the air. Very excited. We know that we are no longer able to really go all out with our swearing, and we are very excited to see where that goes. There's, the good doctor George Carlin did a bit showing us what we can and can't say on the radio, which I've been studying all day today. So I think I'm raring and ready to go.
Excellent.
We're just gonna start speaking in ye old English, since we can't curse anymore.
I like that. That's a radio personality that I can get behind.
I mean,
if Shannon goes full Renaissance.
I've always wanted to rock a corset.
Yeah, full Victorian.
So
honestly, I'll be morning top 40 radio a-hole announcer. Shannon can be Victorian era.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think honestly, I think I was born for this moment. I'm built to do the, well, good morning on your drive to work. This is Skylar, and you are listening to KUTZ 103.1, The Cuts, and this is Voices River City.
I love it.
Right?
Yeah, that was great.
Dude, that's a good radio voice.
Yeah, well done.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm sure that's exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah. You know what?
on the punk rock FM station.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, let's get started. I don't know what to expect, but I'm feeling real good about this. I'm thinking about it, and I'm loving it.
Ooh, same.
Is that your catchphrase? Is I'm loving it? Because I think it's taken.
Man.
All right. Next guest. Next.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Well, hello, Sacramento. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Shannon.
No Flo today. Flo is missing our radio debut.
Yeah.
Our debut. I can't even speak. I'm so livid that she's not going to be here. But in lieu of Flo, we have an extremely special guest who is actually on. This is our 100th episode since we restarted in the post-Anthony era, which those Anthony era episodes were phenomenal. Go back and listen to them. But this
They're
is
my
100
favorites by
episodes since the Anthony era. So what a great way to start it off by making our way onto the radio. Our special guest today, sorry for that seg there, jumping a little off, is Brandon Medford, a core member of Sacramento Community Fridges. We will get into what that is and what it's all about. But how are you today, Brandon?
I'm well. It's been a long day, but it's been productive. So yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. You said you got up at 3:30 today?
I got up at 3:30. Went into work, threw some freight early this morning, and then just sort of wandered around and got random things accomplished. And now I'm here. So it was a very productive day, actually.
Wow. Well, I'm just so glad you could make it. This is a topic that we've been trying to discuss for a while. Shannon actually brought it to the group, the work that Sacramento Community Fridges is doing. I think mutual aid in general has been on the tip of everyone's tongue more and more as we are going through this, almost a year into the coronavirus pandemic, in a city, in a state where the government is not taking care of people. We're finding we have to take care of each other. And I wanted to talk about that on a broader level, but I wanted to bring someone in like you who's working centered on one of these mutual aid efforts to talk about that. And then we can talk about that on a sort of a higher level. How's that sound?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's perfect.
Great. Well, why don't we just start? Could you please tell us what is Sacramento Community Fridges? How did it begin and what it's all about?
Well, Sac Fridge for All began in October of 2020. Basically to start addressing some of the food insecurity issues folks in Sacramento were going through. I mean, we were almost half a year into the pandemic and there didn't seem to be any local government or like federal response coming, and it was sort of up to people to start taking care of people. I wasn't part of the group that kind of incepted it. I joined about a month in, and was super excited to just kind of hit the ground running and start cooking for the fridges, start joining the rest of the core group. And it's just grown from there. And it's seriously been the most fulfilling thing I've done in a long time, and definitely kind of kept me going through this year and kept me positive.
That's awesome. So what is the scope of this? How many fridges and pantries are there currently in the region?
Yeah, for sure. Like currently we have 2 fridges and 1 pantry in the Sacramento area. We've got an F Street mini fridge that has a small pantry. That's our most active location, even though it's just a mini fridge. It gets incredible traffic. I'll usually drop off food like later in the evening and then come back and check on it the next day and it's all cleared out. And almost every time I'm there, I'm having just amazing interactions with people in the community because it's a really cool kind of hub, and it's every, like the entire strata of the community is using this fridge. You have anywhere from folks that live across the street to unhoused folks to people who are just in town visiting, and they think it's the coolest thing to be like, hey, there's free food here, and maybe I didn't have like extra money in my pocket for a snack today, or I didn't know where dinner was going to come from, and you walk by and you see this project that it's clearly just a lot of love, and it's something that is really needed in this community right now.
Yeah. You said you're a part of you're a core member, and then there are volunteers. What is that structure? How many core members are there and how many volunteers?
We've got a handful of core members right now. We're actually searching for more. I don't know the exact count because we kind of, since it's a like semi-autonomous collective, we kind of move in and out. And if someone like has a boundary they need to set or has to put energy somewhere, it's kind of like a come and go situation, which is great because obviously everyone has lives and everyone has like different things they're trying to accomplish. So we're not trying to monopolize their time. But we have loads of volunteers. Every location has like 3 shifts essentially, for cleaning, maintenance, kind of taking pictures for updates so we can post it on the Instagram. So that adds up to loads of volunteers, and we're actually searching for some more volunteers. The F Street location has plenty. The 25th and the Oak Park locations all have like full staff on volunteers, but we've got 2 upcoming locations. South Sac at the PSL office, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is dope. We actually have a Black artist from South Sac working on the artwork for the fridge, which is I'm super excited about. So we're actually looking for volunteers for shifts there. And then we have a Marconi Avenue location that's going to come right after that. And we're also looking for volunteers there.
That's excellent. You were talking about how, I mean, this is all, again, and forgive me if I'm sort of hammering this over and over again, but this is community, this is homegrown, this is people helping people, this is we help us, right?
Absolutely.
And so anyone listening, if you're having a rough time, you can go down to any of these locations and you can get some food, and it's there for you. It was made for you. If you're somebody who's been dying to figure out how to help out, how you want to help your neighbor, this is one just extremely great way to do it. You can bake something tonight, put it out there. You could, volunteer with them. One thing that I saw, I went and checked out the ones in downtown and Midtown today. Beautiful. I love it, everything about it. There are signs at them that say, this is not charity, this is mutual aid, right? So what is the difference between, say, charity or philanthropy and mutual aid?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's so cool about mutual aid is it's not governmental, it's not city, state, local, it's literally directly people helping people. You have advantages in mutual aid that it sort of eliminates the stigma of someone who maybe might not always ask for help. The fact that it's there and it's like a passive location, you have this extra option that someone who maybe doesn't think they qualify for something like a governmental program, but they have a food insecurity or a food need. Mutual aid fills that gap basically. And there are folks that midway through the pandemic were having food insecurity, but didn't qualify for any state or local programs. So they fall through the cracks generally. And mutual aid is there to kind of like prop them back up. In charity situations, and a lot of philanthropic giving in the US, unfortunately, it's generally a motivation in tax deduction. And you see earlier in the year, you see very little. Later in the year, when like taxes are coming around, you see a lot more. And it's not that those things are bad, and those things are still able to kind of do good potentially, but there's a lot of red tape involved. A lot of nonprofits, 100% of what's being donated isn't going into direct aid. Typically you're dealing with salaries, you're dealing with different fees associated with that. And what we do is we basically eliminate all that by just involving people directly. And that's why mutual aid is so important. And it's such collective care is how I feel like, and a lot of our core members feel like, how we move forward as people. It's like when we start taking care of each other and we start like having radical empathy for people in our community, that's basically how we advance beyond kind of all the infighting, and then kind of reduce those like barriers of stigma or barriers of someone who may not normally ask for help, but they see that like passive offering of help, and the signage really illustrates that.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I, for most of my adult life, have worked in one way or another in the service industry, and like a big like, and so anybody who's worked there knows that like food waste is rampant, right? Like the amount of food that gets thrown away every day is absolutely criminal, especially when you put it up against the amount of people outside who are hungry, right? And could use that food. And so, you know, obviously like it's occurred to me like, oh, we could set up a service where instead of throwing this away, we could like get it to people who are hungry or whatever. But the issue that always stood in my way of like setting something like that up with any employer that I was working with is liability, right?
Right.
Like their whole thing was always like, well, we would love to do this, but like if somebody eats this food and becomes ill or whatever, then like we're on the hook for poisoning them. So my question is like, how are you guys dealing with that? And is there is liability a consideration, or like how does that work with what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, Samaritan laws, like Good Samaritan laws in this country, actually protects any sort of donation like that. Typically, if it was going to be something that was litigated, there are some nonprofits that offer like liability insurance for that. But the reality is there's never been any litigation on this issue. It's not something that is generally like a litigious activity. Usually what happens is people kind of shy away because they have this perception that there might be some sort of liability on their side. The reality is that's not really there. We have actually really robust Good Samaritan laws in this country that allow you to donate food, allow you to give food away, as long as you're not selling it, as long as it's not for like a for-profit endeavor. Anything you're giving or donating, as long as you're doing it in good faith, is protected under that. So that's a great like first step there. And fortunately, we've actually started coordinating directly with like farmers markets in the area. We work with Sac Food Co-op, which I actually work at Sac Food Co-op, so that was easy to kind of orchestrate. Cool. But like, for example, on Sunday, we get a lot of produce from the farmers market. We have core members that go toward the end of the farmers market and just kind of let folks know like, hey, we're distributing to fridges, or we're going to use food for meals for the fridges. And we load up a truck full of produce. And then we get loads of different donations from Food Co-op. And then I know some cafes and some restaurants have also done direct donations. I had one cafe reach out, a part of Roseville. They're a super dope cafe up in Roseville, downtown Roseville. And they are, they make really cool stuff, but they're also very active in like social justice. Their space is really dope. And they just basically messaged me one day and said, hey, we have a bunch of extra food left over today. How can we get these to the fridges? And I just kind of went through the process. It's you label it, you date it, you basically make sure it's wrapped up, and it's something that it's new. It's not leftovers. It's just like ready to eat food. And they went and dropped it off, and that was really cool.
That is extremely cool. And I said, I don't know, like, how long have you guys been doing this?
We started in October of 2020.
Okay.
So this is just sort of launched in Sacramento. There's a very established program in New York that is, I mean, they have loads of fridges now. I don't even know how many. And they have a very active community of like, they'll go to different grocery stores, different farmers markets, have like coordinated deliveries where one person picks up a bunch of eggs and goes to a bunch of fridges. And so they've had this established longer, and they have a lot more coordination, and that's sort of what we're trying to establish. Portland also is a great example. They have a free fridge program, and the Bay Area's launched one recently as well, and that's just kind of getting off the ground. So it's something that I think is a growing movement, and it's something that is super accessible for people to both donate from and get food from. So I think that openness makes it something that's, if you weren't going to participate in something like this before, you don't have to be present. You don't have to be interacting with anyone. You can just kind of drop it off. People know it was made with love. And at the same time, you can also go there and pick stuff up and know that people in the community like love and care for you. Like this is all mutual aid is rooted in that, and that's what's so cool about it.
So cool.
Brandon, you were talking about our country having robust Good Samaritan laws that protect from liability for, the things that Skylar was mentioning. And so here I'm coming in with the opposite of that, which is that our city does not always have those robust laws, rules, and regulations that protect mutual aid organizations from providing for the community.
Right.
And as someone who's been following the work of Sackfridge for All since it started, I'm interested in particular, if you're able to even talk about it, what happened with your Midtown location.
Yeah.
And how just like kind of what role our community, the bureaucracy of our community played in shutting down helping people.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that, it's sort of a unique situation of that spot, and it's something that I'm sure will come up again. But essentially, the first full-size fridge we had was at that Midtown location, the 25th Street, kind of behind Pacific Market on Powerhouse Alley. That used to be a full fridge and a pantry. And then the host of the location received a notice from code enforcement that it was, I don't have the notice in front of me, but basically the code enforcement citation was pretty bogus. It was saying that it was like discarded appliances. Essentially, it's something that is used for if someone illegally dumps a pile of stuff in the alley, and it's like unsightly and or dangerous. That was what it was cited for, when in reality, like I said, we have volunteers 3 times a day cleaning and sanitizing the fridge. It's maintained. They're beautifully painted by artists in the community.
It's a beautiful setup. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like, that's part of it. We want it to be something where you go there and it's kind of like a living art piece in addition to being like a mutual aid project. And that's been part of what inspired me about it. Like when I first saw, Laszlo was the artist who did that 25th Street one, and it was a gorgeous fridge. So it was a total bummer when that got pulled out. And it was basically, so it was a code enforcement citation, but when we followed up, essentially the issue was code enforcement said they would cite, but they wouldn't follow up on it. There wouldn't be fines. There wouldn't be any actual enforcement, and that they would continue to make citations if there were neighbor complaints, because the origin was a neighbor complaint. Basically, they either didn't understand what the project was or just for whatever reason decided that they didn't like it. And so they contacted code enforcement. It wasn't something the city like kind of set out to do initially. So that was the most kind of disappointing part of that whole situation. And fortunately, I mean, we actually do follow up and kind of contact neighbors in the area to kind of ask them about how the fridge is impacting them, or if it's something that they're supportive of, or we really like to go out and make sure it's something that the community wants and needs. And all of the responses were very positive, and the neighbor who actually filled out the initial citation has since kind of backed off and also wants to contribute in positive ways now, because I think they realized, how much of a impact it had, and how big of a loss that was.
That's great.
But, and
that tells you that, you get something like that from a neighbor, and you automatically, I think there's a part of you that is thinking, wow, what a jerk. But maybe, some neighbors like this one in particular, they are just not as far on their journey to radical empathy as others are. And, they might reach that point now. As you were saying, go on.
No, absolutely. No, it's a situation that we're still trying to remedy. it's sort of a challenging situation because the host isn't the actual homeowner. So when it's a situation where it's not a property owner, and then that property owner gets like a code enforcement notice, a lot of times they don't want that extra headache, and it's not something they're involved in. So I can totally understand maybe someone's reticence who doesn't live on the property, doesn't really understand the project, suddenly gets a citation from the city, and they're just like, no, I want that gone. It's our hope that we'll be able to get a fridge there again. I really think it'll happen. And personally, it's super convenient for me because it's right down the street from the co-op. So that's where I was like kind of dropping most of the meals I would prepare. So we're really hoping that one's coming back. And that's why right now we're currently, when we're finding hosts now, we're trying to make sure we have like the homeowner or landowner, or if it's a business, like they understand like kind of what's going into it. And we're super upfront with kind of like the issue we had with code enforcement previously, but we haven't had any other citations or any other code enforcement issues. And it, like I said, it wasn't even really a legitimate citation because all the boxes they checked didn't even apply to the fridge. So
I do like that it seems as if the city is being a little more hands-off with initiatives like this these days. As you said, there are very robust Good Samaritan laws, but that doesn't mean a city will necessarily honor them.
Right.
As we've seen over the years here in Sacramento with Food Not Bombs, they had been hassled incessantly by a Kevin Johnson Sacramento. And I think early on, possibly in Mayor Steinberg's tenure, for giving food out to people who needed it. So this tells me that maybe, hopefully, we're going in the right direction. Can I just I just wanted to say real quick, mutual aid has a long, proud history in the United States, in this country that is one of the worst, most grotesque capitalist systems in the history of Earth. These beautiful communities have been around since the mid-1800s, of workers, of people of color, marginalized communities that realize that the upper classes, the oligarchy, our government officials are not going to help us. They will let us suffer. They will let our friends die if, God forbid, they have an injury or a family member needs something and they have to step away from work. So we need to come together and form a network. And these have been all over the country, really since the 1800s. And it ties deeply into just general organizing in the US. And a lot of the best things in the labor movement have roots in mutual aid organizing. I don't know if anyone had anything to say about that, but I just wanted to mention that real quick.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely accurate. And it's also like I'm from Oakland originally, and a big inspiration for food outreach and mutual aid comes from seeing what the Panther Party did, what the Black Panthers did with free food program, free lunch program,
kids at school. Yeah, and the government hated that.
It's so funny because it's an example of dual power that you can point to and say it was very successful in a very short window of time, and it really pissed a lot of people in power off. And that's sort of it's so much easier now to organize collectively, but it's actually funny that there hasn't been a program kind of that robust and kind of that with that much weight behind it, except for nowadays during pandemics and things where clearly the government's not going to step in, and we as people have to take care of other people. You see loads of organizations stepping up with massive mutual aid efforts. I don't know if you're familiar with the Hood Squad in East Bay, but they basically go out and serve hundreds of meals in their van, their mutual aid van. And they do that at least weekly. They're constantly live streaming, super active in the community. And that's something that kind of I want to definitely move toward personally, in addition to doing Sac Fridge. because I work with a lot of medic groups in the area, a lot of kind of groups that grew out of the summer protests and have kind of tried to figure out, well, the protests are different now and how we're protesting is different. And one way you can protest against the system is creating dual power, is doing mutual aid projects, is collective care, is like an act of radical joy in itself. It's when everything is commodified and when you're under a system where there's a price tag on everything, free food is a super radical concept.
It's incredible. And it's incredible how much it scares those in power when we take care of each other. Can we...
before we move away from that, I have a question related to that. So like, I think, Brandon, I'm not 100% sure on where your politics lie, even though I feel like I can take somewhat of an educated guess. I think most of us can agree that a lot of the problems that mutual aid, especially projects like yours, are solving are created fundamentally by capitalism, right? And leftists and socialists believe that like these problems are systemic and they require systemic and foundational solutions, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's my understanding, and 100% tell me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that sort of the concept behind mutual aid is damage mitigation, right? Like mutual aid sort of comes along behind like the steamroller of capitalism and tries to clean up as much as it can of the mess that is left in the wake of this devastating and inhumane economic system, right?
Yeah.
But I think someone like the more hardcore leftists might have like a critique of mutual aid not actually being a method in which to combat the root cause of the problem and more of just a damage mitigation. And when I say just damage mitigation, I feel like that's like trivializing a thing that I do not mean to trivialize.
Yeah, absolutely.
At all. But like, I was wondering if you have any insight or like have a take on like, is there a way that mutual aid can actually be used to combat capitalism in a fundamental way rather than just trying to right the wrongs that it creates?
Yeah, I think so. And I do think you're right that like some extent there is an aspect of like harm reduction just inherent in mutual aid because it's sort of we're in a system where there's so much we're surrounded by plenty. We're in the farm to fork capital, but most of that food gets wasted and there's so much more food than there are people. And it's not even a logistical problem of getting it to the people. It's a situation where that food is discarded or thrown away or just not utilized in a way that's going to support people. So I can totally understand that aspect of it being like the low level first kind of tier of mutual aid being like harm reduction or being something that's like a band-aid on the problem that is an overarching problem that's affecting the planet in just multiple ways, not just our country. But I also see it as an actual step forward into like what I would like personally to see the future as like, I would like to see like free food trucks, free restaurants, free cafes, like things that it's not a situation where it'll all be donation based eventually. It could be that you have a like city based farm or you have a garden or you have a group of gardeners or you have like gleaners and urban foragers and you're creating from what's already free and bountiful around you. And I think that's kind of like the next step to mutual aid. It's like, what can you do to build an infrastructure that is a non-capital based infrastructure that it takes money out of the equation essentially. Even though right now we're under the constraints of capitalism and what we do is largely donation based or largely like if we need funds, we do fundraisers. But I mean, long term, it would be beautiful to not even have to do fundraisers. It's like we start like seizing the means of production, even if it's just in food, like that's the first step. Yeah. And that's how we like food sovereignty is very dear to my heart. I mean, that's part of why I work at a co-op. That's part of why long-term, I think there's a lot of problems we can solve with just eliminating food deserts. Maybe it's through co-ops in every community. Maybe it's through free fridge programs in every city, but there's a lot we can do with mutual aid to actually advance like the new world that a lot of folks want to build.
I don't think we can understate just, again, I love the term that you were using, radical empathy. I think that the more that we take care of each other, the more that it ingrains itself into our culture and who we are. And I think that can start manifesting in our systems. You were talking about the many different mutual aid things there are out there just within initiatives there are out there just within our city, right?
Yeah.
We talked to, let's name a few. I mean, there's the SAC Med team, the medical folks that are just going out and helping people who are experiencing homelessness, trying to make sure they're okay during this pandemic. What are a couple more?
NorCal Resist qualifies, right?
NorCal Resist, definitely.
Yeah, they're so rad. They're seriously one of my favorite orgs. They do such important work. I mean, even just their bail work alone is huge, but the support they provide for families after they've kind of been through the ringer of trying to immigrate in a way that's like functional and healthy and supporting for their families and getting them out of situations that this country created in their countries to begin with. It's sort of like NorCal Resist is seriously one of my favorite orgs. And I've worked a lot with the Sacramento Soup. I've worked with Crystal at the Sacramento Homeless Union. These are groups that are doing like hot food distro in the city. There's a Slack account where everything's coordinated now. And like Sacramento Punks with Lunch just did a distro the other day that was super successful, and they're an amazing group. There's a lot growing in the city. And like you said, the medic groups like Sac Street EMS was not only supporting protests, but during kind of one of the check-ins of an unhoused member in the community, one of their members came along and checked on this gentleman who'd been the victim of an assault, just a random stabbing in the street. And Stack Street EMS came out. We checked on him. We came back the next week with a doctor from Sac Soup. She checked on him, got him an appointment, got him a follow-up. He's doing really well. I've been able to check on him like once a week for the last couple of weeks. We also have Nomad medics who have been both supporting protests, but also doing harm reduction, doing training, doing like actual hot food distro with me and a bunch of other folks. So there's a lot of programs that kind of were born out of the combination of the summer of protests for a very important and vital cause, and then seeing where do we go after the protests, or where do we go the 99% of the time we're not in the streets, fighting for our rights. So yeah.
We got to move on to the next topic, but I think that is super important. I think it's really interesting when we discuss these, and we've had a number of these folks on the show discussing their mutual aid work. A lot of them, when we ask them about, this radical work, they sort of chuckle at the use of the term radical, because to them, it's like, what else would you expect? What else would you do for somebody else?
Right.
And that to me is like it's just so exciting to hear. And it just warms my heart every time I talk to somebody who's doing work like this. So thanks for all you do. Can you tell us real quick how folks can find Sac Fridge for All, and if they want to A, make use of the services, or B, take part in helping folks, what they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on Instagram at SacFridge, 4 all. That's kind of our primary spot, just because it's such a visual medium, and we can do updates on the fridges. We can kind of get the message out to a lot of folks at once. You can also always email us. We've got SacFridge4all, FOR, all is our Gmail account. So very confusing. We'll eventually get a redirect on that and kind of clean that up. But the Instagram account is the best way to kind of directly, like, you can always DM us, you can email us, you can like boost our stories to your followers, which is super dope. I mean, that's how I found out about it initially. And then I started cooking meals for Sackfridge, and then they sort of reached out in search of more core members. And I was like literally so excited when they mentioned it, because I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to be doing. Like, this is, I have a full-time job, but this is what I want my profession to be. You know, this is what I want. This is my free time, but it's also my passion. So it's just so exciting to be able to do. But yeah, we have, like I said, 3 locations in town. The F Street spot, the 25th is a pantry, and then we have the latest one is the Oak Park, 4200 4th Avenue in Oak Park. That spot is amazing. It's a full fridge and a pantry. And the host there already had like a little book, like a free library, and then like a little kind of pantry area for like hygiene products and stuff. So that's kind of, that corner is going to be an amazing like free bazaar in the near future, which is super exciting.
That rules. I love that.
Yeah.
So cool. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. And I don't know. Whenever we have someone like you on this. Yeah, it's just incredible. So thanks. Hopefully you can stick around. We're going to talk about one more thing. And if you feel free to just chime in and join in on the conversation too.
All right. No, thanks for having me, and I'll definitely stick around. I appreciate you guys.
Cool.
So the topic we are moving to is an incident that happened a few days ago, in which, and I found this on Twitter. Black Zebra put something up, but there's a homeless camp being cleared out, and they have the whole, like, I'll get into this in a minute, but from what you can see in the video, they have like the dump truck, they have the, what do you call the fucking thing that like picks up the claw? They have the claw. So it seems, I mean, anyone who's ever seen a homeless sweep knows that that's what they bring to take people's possessions and take the last things that you have and throw them away and ruin them and destroy them. So there is a team doing that at a location, I think on like Alhambra and X, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So Black Zebra, of whom I am a huge fan and will stand in Cape for every opportunity that I get, often will go out to these places just to put eyes on it, just so that people can see, like, this is what your city is doing. You know, this is the way that we treat unhoused people in our city. So at this particular site, they have a contract, like a private company that the city has contracted to help them out, called Forensiclean, who is out there helping them, you know, like basically doing the sweep or whatever. So Black Zebra's out there, a few other like housing advocates.
Forensiclean, you know, they're going to be great.
Forensiclean, right?
Yeah, totes.
So there's like a few, like some like housing advocates, you know, a few like community members who are out there, and they're sitting there and like yelling at these guys, you know, and being like, "Hey, you're like ruining people's shit, like fuck you," basically. So at one point, these workers, the Forensiclean guys, have had enough of this, go over and get in Black Zebra's face. One guy pulls out a knife and gestures aggressively at the people, to which Black Zebra, like whoever's filming it, is like, "Oh, well, like now you're gonna pull a knife, like that's really great," or whatever. So this kind of made the rounds around Twitter and Sacramento social media. So to update, since that story broke, since Black Zebra put that on Twitter a few days ago, Forensiclean has responded by firing the guy who pulled the knife. And then issued, like, they like give this weird interview to KCRA 3 in which they're like, well, first off, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're really sorry. We would never pull a knife on the community." Like, but then, you know, do that thing. So there's the damage control thing that they're doing. But then they like contend, they're like, "We're not sweeping these camps. We're not destroying their stuff. We're like helping them out because we just clean up the trash and help them, you know, when like one guy went to jail, so we
my
got to
blood
do
pressure.
something with his tent, right? So like, which I'm like, all right, you know, one person got into a motel, so they don't need their tent anymore or whatever,
Right.
but they're trying to frame it as like, we're helping these people, you know, like we're helping these unhoused folks, we're doing them a big favor. But then in the background, there's like a claw picking up tents and throwing them in a dump truck.
Yeah.
These are people's homes.
Right. Well, not only is it their homes, it's like all of their possessions. There's a lot of these folks
Correct.
who don't have anything except for these tents and like the blanket that's in it.
Yeah.
And they're hucking them in the God damn it. They're hucking them in the trash.
I'm glad it wasn't me.
So I guess I wanted to ask Shannon, is there any veracity to this claim in your expert opinion? Do you think that Forensiclean is out here in the streets trying to enhance the unhoused experience and help these folks just kind of help them keep their things tidy?
For listeners who don't already know, because we are new to radio, Shannon is an expert on this. She's been working with services for people experiencing homelessness for well over a decade, and she's the director of Mary House, which is the emergency daytime drop-in shelter for women experiencing homelessness. Keep going, Shannon.
To answer your question, fuck no. They are definitely not helping people experiencing homelessness. I mean, let's just like let's take a step back from all of this and just look from the outside of what's going on here. You look at that footage and you have a dump truck and a claw and these guys dressed in work gear, whatever, that are literally like ripping apart people's possessions. Now, I think it's important for people to know in terms of the culture of homelessness that when this is all you have, you don't just abandon it, right? Like this is your every possession. This is your home. So like one of the videos shows like a full, like a hot plate that's set up and a full bed situation. Yeah. Like this is not someone who is just like, oh, I don't need all of these things that I use to survive every day anymore, right? This is someone potentially who is left to get services for the day, and they're, entrusting the other people in their encampment to watch over them, right? Yeah. But then of course, because the city really loves to break a public health order and sweep people, putting their health at risk and moving them around.
So let's tell people what that public health order is.
Don't move people experiencing homelessness from their camps.
This started when coronavirus hit and we did not have anywhere for folks experiencing homelessness to go. So they said, please.
By they, you mean the CDC, right?
The CDC said, please stop rousting people who are experiencing homelessness when we are asking everybody to stay in place.
Right. I believe there's actually a court order as well. Like I think it's actually a city court order that came down to stop the sweeps. So it's not only the CDC recommending it, it's actually mandated to not happen, and they're continuing.
And our public health official, Dr. Bielenson, when he was was the public health director, also put that in the mandate. Dr. Kassirier has continued to carry that mandate over into her tenure. This is like, and it's best practice, obviously, right? Because what we know is that if somebody tests positive for COVID in an encampment on a Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, an encampment is swept, and on Thursday, that test pops a positive. Now you have no way of finding that person, and the contact tracing for the person experiencing homelessness who has popped a positive COVID test is like next to impossible. Therefore, putting any like potentially hundreds of people at risk, right? So what we're saying, so the order is just like keep people where where they are camping.
So let me try and get this straight. The correct thing to do is to let people experiencing homelessness stay in their tents with all their belongings and try and take care of themselves the best they can while we don't have better options for them. And yet, the city of Sacramento, I don't know if this lies on the city manager or if this lies on Daryl and his colleagues, Kaka. The city decides, you know what, we're going to hire this questionable firm, Forensiclean, to throw out all of these people's earthly belongings. And then, one of the people who works for Forensiclean is going to pull a knife on demonstrators.
Right. Like, just to kind of go back to what you're saying. So the way that this is worded in the article is, in this KCRA 3 article, is hilarious. So like from the article, it says on Thursday morning, she, meaning that I think one of the woman who's representing Forensiclean in this article, she said her crew was called in to clean a couple of tents after one homeless person was moved to a motel and another was arrested on an outstanding warrant. I would love to hear a recording of the conversation in which the city called Forensiclean and was like, hey, a homeless person was arrested on an outstanding warrant. Could you come by and clean their tent for them?
Right.
Like,
you get housing. Do you just walk away from all your belongings?
So what happens in these situations is, and I can tell you because I have facilitated helping people get into more stable situations, is that you say, okay, well, you're going to have a motel voucher at this time, or you're going into the shelter at this time. We're going to give you X amount of time to go gather all of your earthly possessions.
Right.
Yeah. At which point, like, you may abandon some things. Surely. I mean, absolutely. Because when you are living outside, if you're experiencing homelessness, like, where in the hell else are you going to put your stuff? It's not like those of us who are living inside who are like, well, I'm just going to chuck this all in my trash can, because our municipality does not provide trash cans for people experiencing homelessness. They readily provide a dump truck, a claw, law enforcement officers, and an abusive contracted team called Forensiclean to come out and rip people's stuff up aggressively, which somehow in their faces translates to joy. Those guys are having the best time. Like, there is the absence, whatever the exact opposite of radical empathy is, that's what those guys are experiencing.
Thank you.
I love
moment.
that. Well, I will tell you this. I mean, not that I'm not gonna cape for Forensiclean, but according to this woman who gave the interview to KCRA 3, it sounds like they kind of have a tough job. At one point in here, she's describing their job and she says, quote, "There's dead rats falling on them. There's rat feces. There's rats crawling all around them," she said.
Everywhere.
Maybe that's God telling you something.
I will say that I don't know what they pay the people to work at Forensiclean, but it can't be worth rat feces and having dead rats falling all over you the entire time you're at work. I mean, they have to pay a competitive wage to get people to go and do that.
I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Like, a job, if their job actually was what this person is saying it is, it's not an easy job. Like, cleaning up.
And in some ways it can be important, right?
Totally. But
scenarios.
let's say like in a world where Forensiclean shows up and they actually give a shit about the people that they are helping, because that's what they're saying in this article. We actually care. We care about people experiencing homelessness. Like, that's when you show up and you ask people, is there any garbage here that you would like us to take for you? Like, is there anything that you've been meaning to get rid of? Like, how can we help you keep your space clean so that you feel a little bit more taken care of, rather than coming in and just like pulling things apart. Like
full claw on an entire community.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to know, if you are not familiar with that encampment, it is large and it is active. There are people who are living there and have been for a long time. So to argue that that was an abandoned encampment is also criminal. It's audacious to say that it was abandoned. There are people who have been living there for a very long time, and I can walk there from my house now and tell you that there's people living there. Don't tell me it's abandoned.
Yeah. And
I started this episode thinking that Forensiclean, giving them the benefit of the doubt, thinking they might be good people, but it kind of sounds like she's lying.
What were you saying, Brandon?
Weird.
Well, what's especially brutal is like I've documented some sweeps, and I've gone out to kind of help some unhoused folks deal with them, like either haul away kind of what they can haul away if they're being swept, or kind of temporarily get them to a new location that's safe. And what's actually actively happening is like Sac PD, Sac Sheriff, and these cleanup crews are preventing anyone from even helping unhoused folks get their stuff together and helping them haul it away. They're preventing us from even like informing them of their rights and kind of what they can do. And it's a really brutal situation to have a bunch of like kind of officers who are supposed to be in it for public safety and keeping the community safe, not wearing masks and parading through these camps and tearing through people's belongings, destroying brand new tents that have been fundraised by the community. Like it's brutal. We're in the middle of winter. We're in a pandemic that's running unchecked. Our sheriff department doesn't wear masks, and it's obscene. It's like they're walking around as like active super spreaders, like hitting the most vulnerable among us with like taking every possession they have in the winter of a pandemic where the city has no solutions and no services.
By the way, I've sat down with the Broadway PBID, the business district, and Sac PD has walked in and actively is trying to just shuffle people experiencing homelessness away from their businesses. It is
Absolutely
the interests of capital. It's the petite bourgeois using the coercive arm of our government to harm our most marginalized community.
Yeah.
Dave, I don't want to put you up on airs or anything and put you on a pedestal. That take was perfect. That was, as far as the cops go, that was a perfect take. Which I say I'm only bringing this up because now my appetite for perfect takes has been whetted. But I fear I can never find a place online where I can satisfy this craving that I have for perfect takes. And I feel like as the person who kind of pushed the initial take on me and led me down this path to where I can't stop thinking about takes. Do you have anywhere where I can go to find like a steady supply of perfect takes?
That's a fantastic question. And I think I am the person who can answer that. Originally, I used to say that there is one place that you can find perfect takes.
Oh.
Now I know that there are two. The first place being voicesrivercity.com, where you have over 3 years of perfect takes. Old news and arts coverage dating back to 3 years ago, all the way to our podcast today. We have done the Staff Follows the Money Project, all sorts of other cool things. We're on all sorts of social media. Of course, we're on YouTube, Voices River City. You can watch us there. We're on Facebook as Voices River City, Twitter and Instagram at Voices River City. You can find us and support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Voices River City.
Dave, why would somebody want to become a patron of the show? What do they get out of the deal?
Well, once a week, you get an hour of perfect takes from us, whether you pay us or not.
Right.
But
I know. I already get that. But why would I fork over my hard-earned money that I work so hard to get for myself?
Absolutely. Now, were you to pledge $5 a month to us. That's a beer at the bar that none of us are going to right
That's
now.
nothing. I throw $5 away without thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm throwing $5 away right now.
Yeah, I threw $10 away just a couple seconds ago.
That's 2 patronages of Voices River City that you could give us. So
Wow.
that's 4 to 5 episodes extra a month. That's a Friday episode every Friday, the best day of the week. TGI Friday, Voices River City episodes.
Incredible.
So consider becoming a patron there. Now, let me tell you, there's a second place full of not just perfect takes, but perfect tunes.
No.
Yes. And that place is called KUTZ 103.1 FM. You can listen to us there every Tuesday on your drive home from work at 5 p.m. We might have other slots. We'll be figuring that out. But for now, that's where you'll find us. We are so excited for that. KUTZ also is nonprofit. They do take donations as well. Their website is kutzfm.org. And if you want to support them, you can go do that there. They're phenomenal. I am so excited to see this thing grow. It's been hard for all of us to grow all of our projects during COVID, but now is the time. Now is the beginning of all things great. And so I'm excited to see where that goes. You can find each of us on social. I am on Twitter at Unokempa, at YOUKNOWKEMPA.
And you can find me at Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
I'm at Shan N.D. Stevens, and Flo, who is generally on the show, is at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE.
Now, Brandon, do you have a place where you can be found online personally?
I mean, I can always be found posting on the Sackfridge for All account. So Sackfridge, the number 4 all on Instagram. I'm also just on Instagram, Great Green Sea. And I just kind of post my little cooking and mutual aid efforts there. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Perfect. Well, Brandon, thanks again for coming on. Really awesome to talk to you, and excited to see where things go. And thank you for the work you're doing.
Absolutely. This was super rad, and I appreciate you all. This is a great experience.
All right, guys. Well, that is going to wrap us for today. But to everyone who's listening to us, we want you to know that we love you, and we want you to stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me.
All right. That's that.
That's a wrap.
That one got bleeped, didn't it?
Beep.